Today we are making Goblin music, and I do mean we. 2 months ago, I put out a call asking for your help with this project. Goblins, musicians, people with instruments, I need your help. And you answered. I got over 100 submissions from goblins in the community, including Louise from Rogue Hobbies, Eric from Eric's Hobby Workshop, and Trent from Miscast. People played weird instruments, played weird melodies, and some people just went full goblin mode. This project has taken me months to put together. It has been one of the most difficult and most rewarding projects I have ever worked on. Between making goblin instruments and making goblin music, my brain has just been filled with... My goal with this project was to make an hour-long track of goblin background music, or goblin music to study and relax to. Why, you might ask? Well, the short answer is for D&D. Background music is key to setting the mood in D&D, and every time I try and run a goblin-centered session, I run into the same problem. There is no good goblin background music. Now, before you get mad, let me explain what I mean by good background music. Good background music should be at least an hour long. If it's too short, you end up having to constantly change the music, and this can interrupt the flow of your game. Background music should be able to keep playing while you play. A song that is perfect for the specific scenario but is only 2 minutes long really just isn't very useful. Next, the music should set the tone. If you're running an epic fantasy adventure, then the soundtrack to Space Jam is probably gonna mess with that vibe. The music can't be too distracting and it has to sit in the background. You have to be able to talk over top of this music. I know goblins are sometimes associated with metal music, but metal music does not make good background music. I had a lot of people suggesting I just use Necrogoblicon, but just because something has goblin in the name or is goblin themed doesn't make it good background music. Lastly, and this one's a personal preference, but I can't stand when D&D background music is just ambience and the same sweeping melody looped for an hour. Hearing the same song over and over again can be just as distracting as music that is too overstimulating. There is background music for pretty much any setting you can think of on YouTube, and they're all pretty popular, which tells me there are probably other DMs out there who have been trying to run a goblin session and run into this same problem before. So my goal is to make an hour of original music that doesn't repeat. It has to feel goblin-y but also sit in the background. I've given myself the extra challenge of only using live acoustic instruments to give it that extra goblin feel, and I'm completely out of practice. I haven't written a song in over a year. Was this a mistake? Never stopped me before. But before we get into goblin sounds, there's another sound we need to focus on. That's right, this video is sponsored by Baron of Dice. Take it away, sponsor clown.
Dice, dice, the clicky clicky's nice. If you think you have enough, well, I have some advice. Buy more, buy more! Check out the Baron store. Everything you need for RPGs, war games, and more. These dice are nice, I can't be more concise. They're absolutely sick and also reasonably priced. So next time you are raring to indulge in your life, check out the Baron of Dice.
Baron of Dice makes high quality dice perfect for wargames or D&D. They sent me a couple sets to try and they are awesome. I've been DMing a lot lately and I've been using these sets exclusively. This Caged Monster set is my favorite and it makes the best dice sound I have ever heard. Check this out. Oof. If you're looking to get some new dice, and I know you are, check out baronofdice.com. For the month of November, you can get 20% off by using the code ROLL'EM. Click the link in the description to let them know that I sent you. Thank you so much, Baron, for sponsoring this episode. Back to the video. I look like fucking Prince Charming, dude. Alright, let's make some music. To do that, we're gonna need some instruments, obviously. I've been playing music since I was 10 years old, and I've been collecting instruments that whole time. Unfortunately, all those instruments are 11 hours away, so... let's make some. All stringed instruments kind of function the same way. You tighten strings really tight and then tune them, and you put them into something that lets them resonate. So using that basic idea, I'm gonna experiment a little bit. The first instrument I made was my bass sieve. Now I didn't really think this one through, I just thought the sieve was kind of guitar shaped, so I stuck some guitar strings through this mesh part, through the hole, and then I tightened them with some eye screws I got out of a mounting kit. And to my surprise, it kind of worked. But it was really quiet. So to amplify it, I put it on top of this food container, and that's some goblin-y bass, let's go. For my first song, I used this accordion tune my brother sent me. It had a simple structure, and it evoked the image of a goblin fishmonger, which I used as a basis to work from. For each of these songs, I tried to create a character or a narrative. This is similar to how I sculpt, letting the narrative guide my creative decision making. I started by recording the bass sieve over top of the accordion, which sounded really good, but didn't really add anything. I then recorded some melodies and some percussion, added more sounds, but the more I added, the more the song just felt off. I knew I needed to record a lot of music for this project, so I decided to just move on to the next one. And then I did that for a while and I moved on to the next one, but after a few days of recording, I didn't like anything that I made. Honestly, I was getting scared I wasn't going to be able to pull this project off. I realized what I needed was to consult an expert. But where was I going to find an expert in Goblin music?
I'm Matt, and my artist name is Freshman Biology. I make creature music.
Matt is maybe the best Goblin musician in the world, and we had a blast talking about making creature music.
What do you think it is about goblins and like little freaky guys that is so compelling?
That's a great question. We talked about the challenges of making Goblin background music, and by the end of our conversation, I felt ready to keep making music. I realized one of the main things bothering me about the songs I'd made was that they were distractingly off time. I thought this would give them a Goblin feel, but looking back, when music is off time, it draws your attention, and that's the opposite effect I want for this project. Matt told me that he records with a click track so that even if one of the instruments is off, there's a unifying factor that's making the songs easy to listen to. With so much dissonance, this is really important. So I went back through all the songs I've been working on and set them to a click. This took a really long time, but instantly the feel was better. I also realized that one of the main things slowing me down was the rule I made about only using acoustic instruments. The thought behind it was that playing everything live would have a real goblin-y feel, but I got enough goblin energy from the submissions that I got. I don't think the song having goblin energy is going to be a problem. I mostly make music digitally nowadays, and also only having instruments that I made myself that go out of tune really fast and are really hard to play, all of that combined was really slowing me down, so I let go of that rule. Making an hour of original Goblin background music was enough of a challenge on its own, I didn't have to make it harder for myself. Once I let go of that rule and started using MIDI instruments and loops, I started to have fun again. I found adding a consistent rhythm underneath the songs made the songs so much smoother and easier to listen to, even if you don't really notice them. In some instances, I would add a loop because I liked the beat, but then I would re-record that beat onto percussion I made out of junk I found lying around the house. Using the preset beats more as inspiration gave me ideas I wouldn't have been able to come up with on my own. Enough talk about music, let's make another instrument. This is my canjo. If you follow me on Instagram at Goblins, then you might have already seen this beauty. To make a canjo, all you need is an empty can, preferably clean, but we are making Goblin music, so up to you. Screw it to a long piece of wood. I got this one from a broken canvas frame. Drill holes into the can. Attach some eye screws to the top. Run a guitar string through the hole, and then use the eye screws as tuning pegs. The can helps it resonate, and the wood lets you play it kind of like a guitar. Right? I bought a lot of guitar strings online when I thought I'd be making a lot of sci-fi terrain, and you know me, I'm a fantasy guy, so I basically used none of them, but this allowed me to experiment a lot with guitar strings in making all these weird instruments. I tuned the canjo to a fifth, sort of, which gives it that power chord feel and makes it fun to play. One of my favorite parts of this project was making these weird instruments. I think this will surprise no one because making things is kind of my whole thing. But my actual favorite thing about this project was how many people got inspired to play music because of it. I think because the prompt allowed people to play badly, it gave people permission to try. And I think a lot of people surprised themselves. I truly believe everyone should play music, and I believe everyone can write music also. I'm going to talk you through the process I go through to make these songs, and I hope it shows you that you don't need to know what you're doing to make music, and anyone can do it. So let's make some music. I'm using GarageBand because it's what I have. I made all my background music on GarageBand. It's fun, it's accessible, it's easy to use. I'm just a big advocate for using the accessible program first until you find its limitations, and then you can upgrade later. Basically, when I'm making these tracks, I'm following Matt's advice.
In your case, hopefully, like you can glean some of the intentions from the people that are sending you files and like riff on those, because it sounds like people were having a blast.
We're going to use Louise's submission as an example. If you don't know Louise from Rogue Hobbies, that's crazy to me. She's one of my favorite YouTubers and mini painters. Her style is really whimsical and fun, and I think that's reflected in the way she plays too. I started by breaking up Louise's takes and setting them to a click track. They all lined up pretty well, but I had to do some minor edits to make it all work and to line it up in a way that felt like a song. After putting that together, I found that there were 4 distinct movements. There's this main whimsical melody. There's this driving march. There's this drony, moody flute. And this kind of sleepy melody. Louise has an awesome line of goblins set in a place called Rascal Town, so as I was working on the song, I kept asking myself, what does Rascal Town sound like? Taking inspiration from the visuals of Rascal Town and combining them with these 4 distinct movements, to me told the story of a day in Rascal Town. The drone is that sleepy, dewy morning where everyone's still asleep. Then it's morning and all the goblins are waking up, ready for a day of fun. Then they're off to work, taking things a bit more seriously, but always humming a jaunty tune. And finally, after a long day of work, they all fall asleep. I've got the story, I've got the melodies, now I just need to fill out the rest of the song. So, first, Louise's playing was too good. To make it sound more goblin-y, I doubled her flute sound with a recorder I bought at the dollar store. That creates a little bit of dissonance and makes it sound like 2 goblins are playing together. I wanted the song to have little guy energy, so I avoided using too much low end. Instead, I kept things light and plucky. Next, I added some canjo and my makeshift snare. And that sounds like this. I added a bongo loop to keep a consistent rhythm, and then topped it up with some percussion and silly plucky sounds that Matt gave me. Finally, I topped it off with a couple of MIDI percussion instruments, and with that we've got our main theme. For the morning part, I kept things pretty simple. I added a frog kalimba from Suburban Bat. I added some shakers from Quest the Bard to sound kind of like rain. And I added some bowed saw from Hobby Mule. Together, that sounds like this. The working section is also pretty simple. I started with some shakers. Then I added some tangle harp from Hobby Mule. Then I added a few clackers from Max. A few squeaks from Liam. And altogether it sounds like this. For the final section, I added the bowed saw back in, and it just so happened to harmonize perfectly with the melody. I added Quest's shakers again. And finally, I remixed Steven Zitch's kalimba part to fit the melody better, and altogether, it sounds like this. I really loved the way that Rascal Town came out, but it did take a little too much time. I knew going forward, I would have to speed up the process and keep the songs a little bit simpler. I thought I would have a little bit more trouble with Eric's song because this is what he sent me. But after putting it to a click track and rearranging it a bit, it actually started to sound like something. Eric's melody was really chill. It gave me kind of old school video game vibes mixed with like a military march, which I feel like perfectly matches Eric's vibe. The first thing I did was I doubled the melody with just me whistling, and that sounded like this. But when it came to filling out the rest of the song, I knew I needed to make another instrument. For my next instrument, I have my tin harp. I was thinking about how violins worked, so I glued this old sewing tin to a piece of wood with some hot glue so I can remove it later. I used the same eye screws for tension, same guitar strings, but this time I added a balsa wood bridge so that I could get 2 notes for each side of the bridge. This can be tuned. It kind of goes out of tune pretty quick, but you can get a kind of limited range of keys, and that's what I did for Eric's song. I added this tin harp to the main melody, and it sounded like this. This to me really filled out the rest of the song, so I just went in and I added a conga part. I added some MIDI percussion and some sound effects from the Goblins, and it sounds like this. I hope you're enjoying the video so far. I make a lot of things, but this is my first time making a video about making music, and it's really tricky because the truth about making music is that most of the time it just looks like this. Like I said, this video took months to put together and it was a huge amount of work, so if you could subscribe, that would really help me out. And if you want to help support me directly, you can join me over on Patreon. The support over there allows me to keep making videos, and I cannot thank my patrons enough. Alright, back to making music. I started thinking about this process as musical kit bashing. I would take one of your samples and use that as the driving inspiration. I would add different parts on top, and then I would let a narrative reveal itself from there. As I made more songs, I started to refine the process. I got better and better with each one, and now that the project's over, I feel very capable of doing the project. I feel like I've finally learned how to make Goblin music now that the project's over. Let me show you more examples of this musical kit bashing technique. I got this percussion sample from Connor, and I used that as the foundation of my rhythm. So this is an example of a song where I added a loop underneath the track, and then I re-recorded the part with my own percussion. Once I had that basic rhythm, I added the canjo as my primary melody. After our talk, Matt sent me a bunch of Goblin samples, which were super useful for this project, and this one in particular drove the narrative of this particular song. This kind of bubbling sound effect, to me, gave the atmosphere of a Goblin alchemist. After I found the narrative, I threw in a bunch of sound effects, including Dan, who played a guitar with a rapier. I threw in some ocarina from Suburban Bat. I threw in some goblin muttering from Gobliock. Just as many sounds as I could possibly fit into this track. And eventually, it sounded like this. I loved all the Goblin submissions that I got. A lot of them made me laugh really hard, a lot of them added a lot of color to these songs, but there weren't a ton that were musical enough to form the foundations of a song. Luckily, my friend Liam came in clutch. Liam and I used to play in a band together, and he is an amazing sax player, and he sent me a couple of absolute bangers. We used to make up a lot of songs on the spot, and we joke about how they would always end up turning circusy, so in honor of that, I decided to make one of Liam's songs real circusy. I started to reach the limitations of my canjo and my tin harp, so I decided to make one last instrument, and this one I think is particularly clever. I don't know where they come from, but I see them all the time on the street and I pick them up. They're these long, thin pieces of metal, almost the shape of coffee stir sticks, and to me they kind of looked like the keys to a kalimba, so I decided to try and make my own. I experimented for a while trying to create something strong enough to hold these metal pieces in place, but it's hard to create enough tension. Then I thought I could use my jeweler's saw. Not only could I put this firmly in place, but also I could shorten it to create a piece that is easy to pluck. Put that over top of something hollow, and you've got yourself a saw limba. The sound is pretty spooky, so I used it as the lead for this creaking floorboard Goblin nest song. After weeks of writing, I put all my songs together, and I wasn't even close to an hour. All this work, all these people who contributed, who were expecting to see the project finished, and I was going to fail. Or at least I would have, if it weren't for one Goblin hero, Rossi. Rossi is an amazing Goblin illustrator, and I'm a huge fan of his work. And he was one of the first people who submitted a song, but it was like a full song with multiple parts. And then he sent another one, and another one, and another one. Rossi sent me 10 songs and single-handedly saved this project. Also, we don't know each other except liking each other's stuff on Instagram, so this was extra crazy. I cannot thank Rossi enough. Please go follow him at Rossi Does Drawings. With Rossi, Matt, and myself combined, I have 40 minutes of Goblin music unlooped. Some of the songs are really short and can definitely afford to be looped, and with a little clever atmosphere, I am confident I can get it to an hour. I'll be releasing the hour-long track later this month. I can't believe this project is going to work, and I can't wait to start sculpting again. But wait, what about Trent's song? Well, funny story. Before I put out the call asking for submissions, I teased the idea of making Goblin music, and not knowing what I was going to be doing, Trent sent me some voice messages, and they sounded like this.
He's a Goblin man, he's a Goblin boy, he's Goblin around like a Goblin boy.
So you know I had to do it to him.
He's a Goblin man, he's a Goblin boy, he's Goblin around like a Goblin boy, he's Goblin, he's Goblin. Goblin man and a Goblin boy, he's Goblin man and a Goblin boy, he's Goblin, 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 Goblin. What are you doing, Mr. Goblin? You got any ciggies? He's Goblin. Give me some ciggies, mate. I'm a Goblin too. I'm a Goblin too.
Let's never speak of this again.